all away. I cannot come on. No, I will be under. So if your conscience set you free, yes, free. I oh, my dear, I say, far away. Thy will must be done on earth. If your conscience set you free, please pray on. If your conscience set you free, very joyful today, but today is not my day. Every man have his day. Today is the younger Garvey cub. Mighty Messiah Garvey. Want to give a round of applause for all who know Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Give a round of applause for this great Before I even introduce the brother, let me say this year, a dreadful year, so we give honor to know Sir Marcus Garvey, the Honorable John the Baptist, according to scripture of the Bible and direction of work. Put it down to Haile Selassie, the Eternal Messiah. Garvey and Haile Selassie, kiss like wife and husband, you know, way we overstand. So we give honor and honor. So as we said, this year is a very historical year, and I want to share with the people them quick, because I know our brother is very busy, and I know I have other brother to come in to give honor for this great and terrible year. This month coming up, November, one can go research, 1930, the 2nd of November. 1930, the 2nd of November, Rastafari was crowned in Ethiopia. Haile Selassie, the King of Kings, Marcus Garvey prophesied would be the King, our Redemption, our Redeemer. He was crowned in Ethiopia, 1930. Now when you count 1930 to now, you get what? 92. So this year is a very historical for the 92. Haile Selassie also come to earth 1892. He came to earth 1992. And I broke the seal in 1992. And the centenary move, you know? Centenary Chad to Ethiopia. Because Haile Selassie was 100 in the earth. So we all went to Ethiopia and opened up the door. Because before that, Rasta was hard mission to enter Ethiopia through Mengistu and the Russian and Cuba and all these people who had could mention certain name. It was against Ethiopian monarchy. But nevertheless, this year marked did 92. So you have 92 in 1892, and you have 92 in 1992, and you have 92 in 2022. So we're going to give thanks for this and a great applause for that. Yes, so really good, you know, we know it's fun enough, you know. And little Marcus Garvey, young cub, you know. Can say, I might not make the full journey, but my cubs will. And then we have witness that Marcus Garvey cub them. They're all over the place now. All over the place now. Not only little Jamaica. Because time gone, with the quickest quick. Time gone, you could only find Rastafari in Jamaica. Holy Jamaica and Rastafarian. No Rastafari is all over the world. So we want to give her an applause for that. Quick. So, before I introduce the great honorable, I have to introduce our young priest from the local Bath area. So, Brother Tetla, if you're ready to come forward, come forward. Let's run our class.
Bless God. Marcus Garvey, Jr., 17 August 1887, 10 June 1940, born Jamaica. Marcus Garvey was a Cushite kindred African spirit, political activist. The Babylonian chicanery he would always dismantle, expose, and untwist. He was a publisher, publishing words to relieve his Cushite kindred under pressure. He was a journalist with intentions of uncovering the truth hidden by the immoral oppressor. He was an entrepreneur and led by example, self-reliant in the Babylonian Big Apple. He was an orator and simply spoke words of fire. He was a Cushite kindred that saw that the essence of man laid within the self, that every man must be responsible for his own mental, spiritual, and physical health. He was a Cushite kindred that stood firm with courage, a man that understood the rudiments of a man's character. And he was prepared to bleed for the sake of his brother and his sister. With fervency, he urged his Cushite kindred to find solace, to stop following and stop behaving like sheep, rather stand up and take the lead, and then that which you've sown, you shall surely reap. Marcus Garvey wanted to cast out the ongoing immoral oppression. Liberation was his #1 goal. He was a Cushite kindred with the ability to light up and ignite the Cushite kindred soul. The moral oppressor inhibited, prevented, and blatantly stopped his Cushite kindred from their natural progress. But he knew that the will of man can conquer, destroy, and over any type of wickedness. So he told his Cushite kindred how they once stood tall, supreme, gallant, elegant, and brave, spiritually, mentally, and scientifically advanced, while other nations were living in caves. He wanted his Cushite kindred to regain their sense of grandeur, to want more, demand more, and stop thinking poor and even the score. Come away from the mentality of servitude. Take strength from deep within with a big, strong change in attitude. He wanted his Cushite kindred to control their own destiny, come together as one nation to build a strong Cushite kindred nation. To accumulate knowledge with study, to seek education, the gentle touch of nature. being the foundation. Many peoples around the world look upon the works of Marcus Garvey as holy and prophetic. He helped millions upon millions of lost Kushite kindred and others that were mentally, physically, and spiritually sick. He made it perfectly clear that Kushite kindred at home and Kushite kindred abroad all have the same mother, father, and most gracious Lord. Marcus Garvey Jr. spoke for all peoples with impartiality. He spoke for the betterment of the whole world community. One God, one aim, one destiny.
Yeah, give thanks, you know. Great honorable Marcus Garvey, you know. If I and I should go on and tell you about Marcus Garvey, you could almost say what the sun doing here. So we can't go on and tell you all about Marcus Garvey, as the brother say, impartial, unjudgmental, just right. Just right over all things. Just right. You know, Garvey have a word to say that if you cannot do what other man has done, you might as well die. How are you? Them sounds like not an easy sound, you know, to make. That means they must have seen something where I and I don't even buck up on yet. And you buck up on enough terrible things. But he must have buck up on some terrible thing. Man, I walk and I criticize everything when he see. And yet, he cannot do what other man has done. So Marcus says, if you can't find a job, go and make one. Simple. If you cannot find one, go and make one. So today, we give thanks and honor. You know, as we said, the time is moving on, so I'm not going to speak on too far. But Brother Eddie, Andy, please step forward and give me a round of applause. Brother Chaplain for you to be here in the city of God. Give thanks.
Give thanks, good evening, greetings. I feel I want to say, Jah! Ever living, ever faithful. I needed to get that off my chest. It's been a great honor to be here today. And I don't know what took me so long, but nothing happened before its time. And what I've experienced today, I don't think I'll ever be able to forget. I know that I've got it, but now I'll let it go. I can't let it go. So ladies and gentlemen, my name is Eddie Capone, and I'm the chairman of the Marcus Garvey Legacy Trust. And this was inspired by Dr. Garvey. And I thank him for that, because I really see a path to which the Marcus Garvey Legacy Trust can play a part in unity, protection of our legacy and heritage, and the promotion of our legacy and heritage to our younger generation, because they are the banner bearers. They are the ones who will shoulder the burden of the future and lead the way. So I'm really looking for friends, not just look like me, but think like me and will act like me as one. And we can do it, and it's not going to be easy, but I have absolute confidence that where there's one, there's two, where there's two, there's three. And together we'll build an army of warriors.
Yeah.
Without further ado, I'm taking up too much time because we're running out of time, but I just want to tell you something that we're planning in the very near future. And it was something Brother Sean lay on me, and it really knocked me to the floor. Because I started a project which is to celebrate and a tribute to the Imperial Majesty. And what Brother Sean laid on me made me feel I was one in tune with the universe. And this project is going to be a fundraiser, ladies and gentlemen, for Fairfield Vote. I would be devastated if this building ever come out of the hands of the community. Should it ever fall into disrepair and have it taken away, it will never happen while I'm alive. And to that, ladies and gentlemen, I can't do it alone. I will need your help. And this tribute to Imperial Majesty is not just a Bath thing. It's not just an England thing. It's a worldwide thing. And we have to bring together the diaspora around the world, because we're not alone. We're not alone on this island. There are millions of us around the world. And just like Marcus Garvey was able to bring 9 million people together, we can also do it for Imperial Majesty, for ourselves, for our children, and for the future. So ladies and gentlemen, watch this space. And I made some wonderful friends here today, and I will definitely be relating to them, who will relate to you, because I know you have a tight community here, and together we're going to move forward. And having Dr. Garvey here today, his first presence, my first presence to this remarkable building, this is a new renaissance. This is definitely a new renaissance. And I'm not somebody who talk, I walk. And if I have to stand alone, so be it. But I have no fear that I'll be alone, because you're here, I'm here, we are here. So ladies and gentlemen, I ain't saying no more because I could talk all night. I'm just saying about what I'm about to say, but I'm sure Dr. Garvey have a hell of a lot more knowledge and experience to which he would like to share with you and all of us. So thank you very much for this opportunity to be here. Thank you very much for welcoming me and Dr. Garvey and my crew. And words cannot express what I feel right now. I can't find the words, because this is so moving for me. I'm almost trembling. So thank you very much. One love. Yeah.
Good evening. So this is going to be in conversation with Dr. Julius Garvey. You are going to hear his voice. It's been an honour and a blessing. If you don't know me, my name's Sean Sobers. I'm a trustee of Fairfield House and a professor at the University of the West of England. And it's been an honour to work with Brother Eddie Home, Indigo, Alex, and of course Dr. Julius Garvey. So I'm going to go straight into the bio, and then we'll have the conversation. We can open up for any questions at the end.
I think I'll just shorten it.
Yeah.
I don't think we need a bio. I'm Marcus Garvey's second son, Julius Garvey. Thank you. I'm a retired cardiothoracic and vascular surgeon. Retired about 3 years ago. Fortunately, just before COVID. So I've been sitting out COVID at home and enjoying my retirement. But it's indeed a pleasure to be here with you. And I wasn't sure what I was getting into when Eddie penciled this in on the tour. But it's been indeed an eye-opener. Not so much for the boss and boss. We visited the Roman boss, but really to see the residence of Emperor Haile Selassie when he was here in exile from 1936 to 1941. And then to see all the wonderful work that the community organizers have done over the years, starting out 30 years ago, the Caribbean community building from that time until now, and then being able to occupy this particular residence which the emperor left for the community here. And I just think they should be congratulated in terms of being able to build the community around, you know, such an important residence and around such an important historic figure. And obviously it's also given a home to the Rastafari, who we can also call Garvey Cubs, as I heard somebody else mention before. So I feel, you know, very much at home in terms of the vibes that I'm getting and the message that I've had so far from the community here. And you know, certainly we know that the kingdom is coming, the kingdom is here, and we certainly know that our conscience is guiding us forward. So we are you know, on the right track, and this is certainly time, I think, as Eddie has mentioned, for all of us to come together. It's been very much a long distance struggle for us as a people coming out of slavery, coming out of colonialism, but still within the belly of the beast, so to speak. So, but we have to keep on keeping on, because that is the message. And you know, wickedness cannot survive. Righteousness will survive, and righteousness will defeat wickedness. So we can continue to chant down Babylon. Right. So thanks so much for being here, and we'll go to Q&A.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, what brings you back to the UK? You did a previous tour, 2013. You're back now. You did Liverpool previously, London, and then you got more next week as well. So why did you feel it was important for you to do another speaking tour now in 2022 that you've been seeing going on?
Well, the best time to do anything is now. Actually, you know, that's the only time you have. The past is the past. The future hasn't happened yet, so whatever you're going to do, you have to do it now. But now is an important time in terms of the transformation of the world. It's a time of chaos. And if you look at our history, you'll see that we have always made progress when Europe has been at war. As you know, my father's movement came to prominence after World War I, which was 1914-1918. And of course that was when the so-called, you know, great powers fought among themselves and destroyed themselves. So there was a moment for us to move forward. And then again, after World War II, after, you know, about 75 million people were killed in terms of Europe, they also brought us into the war. But again, you see, as Macmillan said, you know, the winds have changed subsequently. And then throughout the 60s, late 50s, 60s, we got independence. And now we have, you know, 54 independent African countries, 15 independent Caribbean countries. And now you see that NATO has created basically a war against the Russians, and they've surrounded Russia. And so now we have the Ukrainian people being used as pawns to fight the war against Russia. And you see that the United States, which is the dominant power in the world, wants to maintain its hegemony. You see that they're antagonizing China. So now you see that the power struggle is going on between NATO, which is Europe in that sense, but the United States is behind NATO. So we're moving then and now towards a situation where Europe is going to suffer in terms of the Ukraine-Russia war. America is going to suffer. We're going to end up with a multipolar universe instead of a unipolar American hegemony. We're going to have basically Russia, you're going to have China, you're going to have India standing on its own, it's not following NATO or the US. Many African countries are standing on their own, they're refusing to follow Biden, etc. So hopefully we'll see what goes on in Brazil. But also Lula, if Lula wins, Lula is very much a man of the people, so the major Latin American country. And, you know, of course, there's Venezuela, there's Cuba, there are others. So this is a time of change, and us as a people, we have to recognize that we should not be taking sides. As they say, you know, when elephants fight, the grass suffers. So we don't want to be the grass, and we should not allow ourselves to suffer when the elephants are fighting, but we should take advantage of that opportunity. So I think it's important now for us to understand that message, for us to understand that we need to come together to pursue, you know, our own purpose in life, which is to free ourselves from the systems that have incarcerated us, because, again, globalization is just another form of colonization, which is just another form of the enslavement of our people. So we have to understand that. And finally, we have to defeat Babylon. We can't pass that on for another generation and another generation. So the time is now, so to speak. Right. That's why I felt it important.
So I want to, you're Marcus Garvey's son. You're also Dr. Julius Garvey, MD. And it's very clear from what you just said that you are Marcus Garvey's son, you know, forthright and powerful oration. I also want to get to know you in relation to your father's values, message, and your journey. You were 7 years old when Marcus Messiah Garvey passed. What do you remember about that time growing up with a figure such as your father? What do you remember? Because you were young at that point, and you know, we go forward. But yeah, what's your earliest memories of your father?
Yes, actually, when he died, I was age 7, but I was back in Jamaica. He had remained in England to carry on the organizational work. We had come back from England because my brother had arthritis in his leg, and we had to come back to a warm climate. So the last time I saw him, actually, I was 5 years old, not 7. So my memories of him are those of a child, you know, just with somebody who was very loving, kind, playful, and that sort of thing, but nothing in any sense political.
And when did you become aware that your father was Marcus Garvey, you know, politician, activist, journalist? And, you know.
Well, that's something I think my mother always, you know, taught me in terms of as far as I can remember. But, you know, over time, you know, different events, shall we say, happen, and you recognize that, oh, you know, there's something not quite normal about the situation, meaning it's different from what you might expect. First of all, when we came back from England on the ship, there was an enormous crowd. I was up on the deck with my mother and my brother, an enormous crowd of people, and you know, I was coming back from England, having spent 2 years and being accustomed to white people, and I said to my mother, what are all these black people doing here? I didn't understand. She said, well, they came to see you, to welcome you. I said, what? You know, yeah, you're your father's son. So again, that was one of the first times, you know, there was a large crowd of people, you know, coming to welcome, you know, my dad's family, if you will. So that was one. And then, you know, where we used to live, Mountain View Avenue, you know, myself and my brother would be playing, etc., you know, on the lawn, and people coming home from work or whatever, they would stop, and, you know, the fence would be lined with people watching us. You know? So again, you got a sense that not just that we were important in that sense, but, you know, my dad or my mother, they were important. And different incidents like that. I remember being at school, high school, and, you know, we had free lunches, and I was getting my lunch from the lady who served, and she leaned over and she said, "Oh, you know, your father was a great man, you know, Marcus Garvey," you know, that sort of thing. So these things accumulated over time. But the basic person who taught me about my dad was my mother.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your mother, Amy Jacks Garvey. She was an activist, journalist, you know, and a forthright, powerful individual in her own right. And, you know, she's responsible for a lot of your father's work being published, etc.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's hear about your mother and how she also instilled values. But
yeah, well, she was a very, you know, strong person. She really stood on her own 2 feet individually. So she was a bit of an equal of my dad. I mean, she didn't necessarily give in to him per se. I think she was one of the early feminists, if you will, in terms of being able to assert herself. She had a very good education in Jamaica. She went to Woolman's Girls' School. You know, Woolman, you have those similar schools in Barbados. But so she was very well educated, and she was a legal secretary before she migrated to the States. Met my dad at one of the UNIA meetings, and then came to work with him and for him as his private secretary, and then subsequently got married. But she was very instrumental in the organization because of her background, because of her education. So she was able to look after the books of the organization, which were kind of in disarray. They did not, you know, educated personnel necessarily to deal with those problems. And she ran the women's page of the Negro World. Certainly when my dad was in prison in Atlanta in 1925, 1927, she published accumulation of his works, The Philosophy and Opinions, Volume 1 and 2. She did that all on her own, and, you know, helped to run the organization during that period of time. And then, of course, when he was deported back to Jamaica in 1927, we all went back, and, you know, she bore 2 children, so she was more a wife there, and mother, than being involved with the organization, you know, up front. And but subsequently, as we mentioned before, you know, my dad moved to England. So, and again, we came back to Jamaica. So she ran the organization, the UNIA, in Jamaica. She participated in it. She participated in politics locally while she was raising, you know, both of us. We got very good education. We went to private schools, and then she taught a lot of young people who came, young historians and so on, Rupert Lewis. And others, Tony Martin, that came to find out the inner workings, so to speak, of the Garvey movement, you know, from the horse's mouth, if you will. So she was very, very active then, you know, as educator, continuing the organization, and as mother, raising 2 children.
Can I get appreciation for Amy Jacks Garvey? And this is not taking anything away from the achievements of Marcus Messiah Garvey, it's also to hail up the women in the movement as well, and plus men in. So you lived in London for a couple of years, went to school here. Have you got any memories from when you lived in London? I know it wasn't for a long time.
Again, you know, in the backyard, snowballs, throwing snowballs and so on, playing with the next door neighbors, that sort of thing. Going to the movies, you know, walking with my dad, and, you know, eating ice cream and buying me ice cream, like those kind of memories. That was quite tough, yeah.
So in terms of your father's writings, again, it's your mother that published that opinions work. When did you start to engage in that literature and those, you know, those writings? Was it through your mum doing that work, or was it later in your life that you engaged? How did that come about?
Well, you know, we always had the Philosophy and Opinions, you know, at home, and there are actually three volumes, and my mother's also written on Garvey and Garveyism herself. She has published her own books So that we always had that kind of reading material at home. And then, you know, being brought up basically as an African, as a Pan-Africanist, you know, I always consider myself African. You know, I'm an African person who was born in Jamaica, you know, went to school in Canada, or lived in the United States, but, you know, I'm an African person who's here in Bath, so, you know, so that was imbibed, you know, over time at home. So that I always pursued the Pan-African literature, etc., to learn more, you know, about my culture and my history. So that I always, you know, read stuff like, you know, by Van Sertima, John Henry Clark, Dr. Ben, and so on and so forth. So over the years, you know, that was my reading to expand knowledge about Africa, going all the way back, of course, to Kemet, to Nubia, to Kush, to Ethiopia, and everything in between. So that was my area where, you know, I always kept reading. Yeah.
Your own career as a vascular surgeon, a medical doctor. Tell us how you got on that journey, because that's you know.
Well, you know, from a relatively early age, I wanted to be a doctor. I think. I had a dog growing up, and I guess we were about 12 or so. He used to go everywhere with me, running, you know, I used to like to run in the bush and so on, and go to the beach and swim. And the dog got sick. And of course, back in the day, we had no veterinarians or what have you, so the dog got sick, and, you know, we couldn't do anything for the dog. We didn't know what to do. So the dog died, you know, so that left a significant impression on me. In terms of an intimate associate who got sick and I couldn't help them. So that moved me in the area of wanting to help sick people, so to speak.
Absolutely. And your CV, you know, it takes me all day to read, but you've been chief surgeon, professor, you ran your own practice. And, you know, illness is often talked about as a leveller amongst people. But we saw with COVID the inequalities that still exist, even in an illness. So what's your career working in the medical profession, I guess, taught you about people, equality, how we treat each other, and is that also a part of the message that you're also looking to tell us in this talk now?
You know, it's very interesting because, you know, obviously we live in the West and we're influenced by the West. But, you know, as we know in terms of reading history, Western civilization is relatively narrow, relatively recent. And our medical tradition per se is also relatively recent. And it actually comes out of another medical tradition, which is Imhotep, you know. It wasn't the Greek physicians who were prominent, or the first physicians. It was the African physicians who were the first physicians, more or less, in the world. And of course, you know, you have the Ayurvedic systems, you have the Chinese systems. You have a lot of plant-based medicines coming out of Africa and the Americas. So the system that I grew up in and was taught is by and large, I would say, a disease treatment system. It's not a healthcare system, although that's what it's named. It doesn't try to prevent ill health, because actually the society in which we live causes ill health. So because the society causes ill health, you have a medical system that treats disease. So it's a strange cycle. And, you know, we are very good at treating disease. We can do lots of things. You know, we can go into all parts of the brain, all parts of the heart, all parts of the lung, all parts of the liver, the pancreas. We can go anywhere and do everything. And so that's it's significant in terms of capacity, but it's a very mechanical capacity, you know, both in terms of surgery and in terms of the medicines that are used. Because again, the medicines are used that are really treatment of symptoms, you know, but then you treat a specific symptom, so you change the milieu, the physiological milieu of the body, and you call it side effects. So each medicine has a side effect. So if you step back and look at it, it has many, many problems because it's not dealing with the human body as it's been constituted, because the human body is about health. If you look at disease, maybe 3% of disease is really genetically determined. You know, that you're born with a gene that's dominant that causes this disease. 80% of the diseases that we have, you and I have, etc., are lifestyle diseases, basically. That's what they are. And when I say lifestyle diseases, they're related to the stress in terms of our occupations and the way we live. They're related to the food, that we eat. As you know all about, high fructose corn syrup, hydrogenated fats. You know all about the processed foods, and you know all about the chemicals that go into the agriculture in terms of the herbicides and the fungicides and this. Now we have genetically modified organisms, so the actual quality of the food is deteriorated, as well as the number of chemicals that are in the food. And each of us has more than 100 chemicals in our body that shouldn't be there, and we don't know the long-term effects. So people tell you that dementia and neurological disease are rising, cancer is rising, and nobody knows why. Well, it's the environment, it's what we do, it's what we eat, it's what put into the food, and so on and so forth. So, we have a disease treatment system instead of a system that tells you, how to take care of your health. Because ultimately, it's everybody's responsibility to take care of their own health. Because if we believe that God made us, He made us healthy. As I just mentioned, 2 or 3% of us have genetic diseases where something went wrong, but the rest of us, we have no reason to be unhealthy. We have no reason to have disease except for the environment and our behavior. So we have to look to ourselves now to be responsible for our behavior, to gain knowledge about the foods that we should eat and, the things that we should do. And, as you, I'm sure you know, but, most of our diseases, if you will, relate to our mental status. Because if you're not controlling your body and your lifestyle itself is damaging your body, then, you really have a mental problem. You're not who you're supposed to be, because you're supposed to be in charge of yourself mentally and then in charge of your body physically. So you have to start with the mind. So a lot of us are mentally incompetent, if you will, because that's the way our society is structured. It's not structured so that we know who we are in terms of our minds, but we're programmed. And we're programmed from the time we're youngsters to behave this way and to behave that way. We're programmed in terms of school, programmed in terms of religion, university, all along, to do things that the society says that we should do in order to function and to get along and to be promoted and so on and so forth. So you'll take on a job because you want to get promoted, but it's a job that stresses you out. So you're damaging your health while you're getting the money and you're buying the new car, the Mercedes or what have you. But, so these are things that, as individuals we have to become responsible for our own mental health and then subsequently our own physical health.
Yeah, no, good. As you're talking, and with that medical knowledge training and that detail, it also brought me full circle thinking about Rastafari and how Rastafari were once considered crazy because we didn't put salt in our food and we didn't eat meat, and, these kind of things. And Tony Sewell wrote that book, Garvey's Children, where he talks about the organisations that were inspired by Marcus Garvey, particularly Rastafari, and then also the Nation of Islam. Nation of Islam, Elijah Muhammad wrote the book How to Eat to Live and the vegan lifestyle. So that if you're vegetarian or vegan, you shouldn't ever be eating outside of your house, really. Do you know what I mean? So it's interesting how your journey through medical, but then it's still in that teachings and that legacy of Marcus that's come through the children.
Absolutely. I think Rastafari need to be congratulated in terms of the Haile living close to nature, because we are a product of nature. So we have to live close to nature. The food that we eat should be natural food, not processed food, and not necessarily cooked in an elaborate fashion where you destroy a lot of the nutrients and so on. So ITAL food, of course, is very, very, very healthy. Yeah.
With your father's message in relation to, race going forward, back to Africa movement, and how do you feel that translates today, and whether an American example or globally, but how do you feel, or where do you see that lesson, that message, and I guess your direction of taking forward that message?
Well, I think a lot of diasporans are understanding the need to return to Africa one way or another, mentally, or as tourists to visit, or to relocate in terms of immigrants. And of course, the Africans on the continent have recognized that too, that they really, are hampered in terms of progress and going forward without their diaspora and the resources that diaspora brings to the table. As you know, Ghana in 2019 conceived of the idea of the year of return. Many other countries have really done the same thing, inviting the diaspora to return. And also, as you also know, the African Union, the diaspora is supposed to be the 6th region. So we are not well enough organized yet to take advantage of that. But that is coming, that is happening in terms of visas and passports and things like that. So as you know, there's been significant progress that the AU has made in terms of the continent, bringing the continent together, so it's not as divided in terms of 55 countries or different regions and so on. So, everybody else is going to Africa, as you know, the Japanese, the Turks, the Chinese, the Lebanese, obviously the Americans, the British, the French, the Germans, So, if we don't go there, then we're very silly. It's the richest continent in the world. But yet still, you still have the poorest people in the world, in Africa. So, we have to right that situation, because it's a matter of liberating our minds and doing the right thing, which I think at this point in time, definitely, many more people are Africa conscious, shall we say, we call it Afrocentric at the present time, and many more people are being involved in Africa. And the continent itself is being involved with the diaspora. In September, I was at a conference in Barbados, you're back home, between, CARICOM and several African countries in terms of trade and investment. So CARICOM is reaching out to Africa, Africa is reaching out to CARICOM, and that's just one indication of us as a diaspora becoming integrated with the continent. Yeah.
Thank you. So I've got one more question, then we'll open it up to some questions from the floor. Also conscious of times, you're going to be travelling back to London this evening. So you also do lots of talking, campaigning, touring about the campaign to pardon your father and exonerate the charges. He's convicted of Melford, trumped up charges. I'll leave it to you to talk about that. And you've had a campaign to pardon. Barack Obama didn't pardon Marcus Messiah Garvey, and now the campaign has moved to President Biden. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, but also how might we get involved in that campaign to add voice to that fight?
Yeah, basically, we've been involved in trying to get my dad exonerated, certainly at least since 1987, which was his centennial. And several politicians, American politicians, have been involved. John Conyers and so on, Democratic congressmen, and House resolutions have been every year have been placed before the Congress, but they usually get stuck in the Judiciary Committee, and then they debate, and then the government changes and ends up as nothing happens. The campaign, if you will, changed somewhat in terms of trying to get a posthumous pardon. because what a posthumous pardon is, it's something that the president can do without having to go to the Congress. He can simply sit down and say, you know, I'm pardoning Marcus Garvey because he was innocent of the charges that were brought against him. So that's the difference between the pardon and the exoneration. The exoneration flat out says that, you know, he's exonerated. Again, the same thing. But as I mentioned, the process is very difficult politically in the United States. And so that's why we switched in 2016. This was Obama's second term. We figured first black president, second term, he has nothing to lose. So, you know, we had a law firm and we presented everything to him. But he ignored it. He never did anything about it. So, of course, we didn't petition Trump. So now Biden is in office, and we're doing the same thing with Biden. We had a campaign to get, the purpose of the campaign, again, was to get the president to sign an exoneration or posthumous pardon. And you're supposed to have to get over 100,000 signatures within 30 days. We did that this last February. We got over 200,000 signatures, but we got no response from Biden. So we've written personal letters to Biden, to Kamala Harris, and so on. My law firm has presented these. And, you know, we're continuing, so that's still the struggle that we're on. Yeah.
Is there an online petition that we can sign?
Well, you can get more information from the website, Justice for Garvey. Justice the number 4, Garvey.com. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I just say something on this? Last year when we put this out and tried to get 100,000 signatures, I was astonished that we couldn't raise 100,000 signatures here in the United Kingdom. I was absolutely shocked. And then I remember Dr. Garvey's words. Everybody is Garvey, 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 but we can't see him. We're not prepared to do anything. People, I urge you, next time this thing come up, please, let's join hands and get this done. We can do it. All we have to do is to sign that petition. Exoneration 4, number 4, Marcus Garvey. Can't be that too much to ask? Is it?
Yes.
Is it, people, too much to ask?
No.
Let me hear you. Is it too much to ask?
No.
Yes or no?
No.
All right. Thank you very much.
So, I want to ask you to thank you to Dr. Julius Garvey. And I'm going to open up to questions, but I want to also show our appreciation for what he's doing. Do we have any questions? Yeah. Do you mind doing the microphone duty as well?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Garvey, for coming here to Fairfield House. And we know who Marcus Garvey is in relation to Haile Selassie, but you were born 3 years into the Emperor's reign. So I would like to know who Haile Selassie is to you, and how you feel about, when you were younger, how you felt about him, and how you feel about his legacy today.
You know, obviously has a tremendous legacy in terms of his contributions to the African continent, and indeed the diaspora, dating back to the Organization of African Unity, which he was one of the founders of back in 1963. And of course, his tour of the Caribbean in 1966 was significant in terms of his outreach to the diaspora. At that time, he offered land also in Ethiopia. There are many Africans there, many diaspora Africans there at H.I.M. So that, you know, his legacy is significant in terms of not only you know, Ethiopian history, but African history and also world history, in terms of the fact that Ethiopia itself, as a country, you know, was never colonized, it was occupied for a period, partially occupied, shall we say, for a period of time, but never colonized. So, you know, a lot of us are proud of that fact. So, you know, he carried himself with significant dignity, and of course, as a historic person in terms of his lineage is of great significance to us, because we've lost Egypt, which was Kemet, and of course it became Arabized after the 7th century of this era. But fortunately, Ethiopia never became Arabized or otherwise infiltrated by foreigners from outside. So we still have that continuing historic legacy, you know, dating back to the kingdoms of Kush, etc. So it's very significant, and we're very, you know, proud of his reign and what he did during his time.